Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Caroline and James Miller Presidential Gallery. In this room, we are going to talk about all presidents of American United States. Let's go. First, we're going to talk about George Washington. We can find him in $1 bill. Washington was born in 1732 in British colony of Virginia. In 1789, he was appointed first President of the United States. He carried out territorial expansion and conquest with Native America. He revoked the alliance with France and he signed the Jay's Deal. Finally, he died in 1799. The second president was John Adams. He was born in 1735 in Massachusetts. He became president at age 61 in 1796. In 1797, he carried out the war with France and he signed the law for foreigner and sedition in 1798. He died in 1826. The third president was Thomas Jefferson. He was born in 1743 in Virginia. He became president in 1800 and he was president during two periods. He bought Louisiana in 1803. This action duplicated the countryside. And finally, he died in 1826. Fourth president was James Madison. He was born in 1751 in Virginia. He was president in 1888 and he was president during two periods. He wrote the first drafts of constitutional and he wrote the Federalist documents. He started the war with Great Britain in 1812. He died in 1836. Fifth president was James Monroe. He was born in 1758 in Virginia. He was president in 1817. He was president during two periods. He dealt with finance collapse in 1819 and he dealt with new position of slavery. In 1819, he bought Florida and he died in 1831. Sixth president was John Quincy Adams. He was born in 1766 in Massachusetts. He was president in 1825. He fought against slavery, but he failed. He joined Cuba to United States, but he failed. And finally, he died in 1845 in Washington, D.C. Seventh president was Andrew Jackson. He was born in 1767. He was president in 1829. He was president during two periods. He signed the laws of relocate in 1830, and in 1836 he collected gold and silver for public lands. For this reason, economy decayed. He died in 1845 in Tennessee. President was Martin Van Buren. He was born in 1782 in New York. He was president in 1837. He has to handle the economic crisis of 1837, but he didn't do well. He didn't want Texas to be part of the United States. He opposed the extension of slavery, and he died in 1862 in New York. Ninth president was William Henry Harrison. He was born in 1773 in Virginia. He was president when he was 68 years, but he couldn't do because he died at 32 days. Okay,
John Tyler. His term began on April 4, 1841 until March 4, 1845. John Tyler annexed Texas to the United States before leaving office. James Polk. His term began on March 4, 1845 until March 4, 1849. He decided to finally the Texas annex to the United States, started by Taylor. Zachary Taylor. His term began on March 4, 1849 until July 9, 1850. Saint Clayton trade that neutralized the possible of building in the future a canal that would connect the Atlantic Ocean with the Pacific. Miller Fillmore. His term began on July 9, 1850 until March 4, 1853. Fillmore signs the compromise which delayed the Civil War. Franklin Pierce. His term began on March 4, 1853 until March 4, 1857. Tried in vain to establish peace in Kansas. James Buchanan. His term began on March 4, 1857 until March 4, 1861. Buchanan, he helped the South. Abraham Lincoln. His term began on March 4, 1861 until April 14, 1865. Lincoln led the Union to victory. Andrew Johnson. His term began on April 15, 1865 until March 4, 1869, allowing states to then to vote to blacks. Ulysses Grant. His term began on March 4, 1869 until March 4, 1877. Favored development of the Industrial Revolution.
His period was from 1877 to 1878. Some of his most important works are: he made a great effort to reform the nation's public administration. He strengthened the federal government. At the end of his presidency, the economy has re-emerged in impressive fashion. James A. Garfield. His period was from 1881 to 1881. Well, he was assassinated before he could do much. James Garfield defeated his party rivals in the Senate and consolidated executive power. He was a very, very good warrior in the Senate. Chester A. Arthur, his period was from 1881 to 1885. Some of his most important works: he created a Pendleton Public Administration Reform Act, voted a proposed Chinese exclusion law that established a 20-year-old immigration ban. He approved the Mestizo Tariff. Avery Cleveland. His period was from 1885 to 1889. Some of most important works are: was created solid sought and restored the authority and power of executive. Benjamin Harrison. His period was from 1889 to 1893. Some of his most important works are he created the Tariff Law of 1890, created the Sherman Antitrust Act for the regulation of corporations in the USA, and other is incorporated Hawaii into the United States. Grover Cleveland. His period was from 1893 to 1897. Some of his most important works are repealed the Civil Purchase Law, signed the Disastrous Towns Act. William McKinley. His period was from 1897 to 1901. Some of his most important works are signed the Open Door Policy with China, signed the Dingley Tariff, which authorized reciprocal trade agreements, and under the McKinley government, the United States emerged as a colonial power. Theodore Roosevelt. His period was from 1901 to 1909. Some of his most important works are creating 5 national parks and 16 national monuments, like, for example, the Grand Canyon, signed the Havana-Varela Treaty with Panama about control of the United States over the Canal of Panama. William Taft. His period was from 1909 to 1913. Some of his most important works are created the Mann-Elkins Act regulation railroads and state fairs, the Pine-Aldrich rate, distance progressives, and he saw dollar diplomacy in Latin America and Asia, encouraging industry and U.S. bankers to invest in those regions.
Woodrow Wilson. Thomas Woodrow Wilson was an American politician and lawyer, 28th President of the United States. In January of 1918, he exhibited his famous 14 points to guarantee peace in Europe and in the world. He participated in the conference. Paris was a Nobel Prize winner in 1900, 19 as promoter of the League of Nations and racial defeater. Warren Harding. He was the 29th President of the United States. He assumed the position of 1921 to 1923. At the end of World War I, he promised the return of the nation to normality. His American First campaign aimed at industrialization and a strong and independent economy. Calvin Coolidge. He was the 30th President of the United States. He began his political career in Massachusetts, in which state he was governor. He advocated a more economical and efficient government, and was also concerned with reducing federal taxes and national debt. Herbert Hoover. He was the 35th President of the United States, from the 1923 to 1933. Had to administer the country during the Great Depression. He based the foreign relations of the United States on bargaining power rather than on the use of force. He was a genius at organizing, putting into practice elements of modern presidents, associated with his successor Franklin Roosevelt. Franklin Roosevelt. He was the 32nd President of the United States, from 1933 until his death in 1945, and has been the only one to win 4 presidential elections in that nation. Governor during the Great Depression, where he directed government resources toward the well-being of the American people. Dwight Eisenhower. He was the 34th President of the United States between 1953 and 1961. Support for the construction of the interstate highway system, which improved the economy. He dispatched federal troops to Arkansas to protect African American students, to enforce federal law. He signed the first civil rights legislation. John F. Kennedy. He was the 35th President of the United States, chosen in 1960 until his murder in 1963. Disturbed by the constant dangers of radioactive contamination and the proliferation of nuclear weapons. Kennedy banned the use of nuclear tests and atomic tests on land, in the atmosphere or underwater. During his tenure, the Peace Corps was created in which any American force enlisted volunteers in developing nations. Lyndon Johnson. He assumed the presidency after the assassination of President John F. Kennedy in 1963. He was named for his fight against racism and implemented the civil rights law that prohibited job discrimination based on race, gender, religion, or national origin, and created the right to vote for all. He founded the President's Committee for People with Intellectual Disabilities, approved the Income Law and the Economic Opportunity Law to eliminate poverty in the African American population. It approved the health areas for the elderly and the poor and the construction of low-cost state housing. Harry Truman. He won the presidency in 1948 during World War I. Truman was an artillery officer, becoming the only presidency of the country who fought in that war. During his tenure, he used nuclear weapons to end the Second World War. He raised the minimum wage and extended social security. He laid many foundations for American foreign policy, especially in relation with the Soviet Union.
Richard Nixon. His period was from 1969 to 1974. Some of his most important works are improve USA relations with China and the Soviet Union, negotiate the talks on the limitation of strategic arms with the Soviet Union. Gerald Ford. His period was from 1974 to 1977. Some of his most important works are in April 1975, President Ford issued an emergency evacuation for the remaining American soldiers in Vietnam. Jimmy Carter. His period was from 1977 to 1981. Some of his most important works are the Camp David Accords of 1978 and 1979, created the U.S. Synthetic Fuels Corporation. Ronald Reagan. His period was from 1981 to 1989. Some of his most important work is oversaw gigantic military growth, including the Star Wars missile defense system, never implemented in USA. George H.W. Bush. His period was from 1989 to 1993. Some of his most important works are created the Consolidated Budget Reconciliation Law of 1990, and the other is created the Clean Air Act amendments. Bill Clinton. His period was from 1993 to 2001. Some of his most important works are eliminated the federal deficit and signed the North American Free Trade Agreement, NAFTA. George W. Bush. His period was from 2001 to 2009. Some of his most important works are Signed the Law, Let No Child Be Left Behind. Other important work is increased the number of USA free trade agreements from 3 to 17. Barack Obama, his period was from 2009 to 2017. Some of his most important works are created the Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act and legalized gay marriage. He was one of the best presidents in the history of the United States. Donald Trump, his period started in 2017 to the present. Some of his most important works are he declares the closure of borders for migrants from the number of mainly Muslim and some Latin American nations. Other important work is ended the U.S. participation in the Trans-Pacific Economic Cooperation Agreement.